My sister's family forced their way into the house. My grandfather left me, brought their furniture in, and told their kids it was now their home. Imagine coming home after a brutally long week to find your own family, your sister, your parents, had not only broken into your house, but were actively moving their furniture in, telling their kids this was their new home. Yeah, that happened. And it was just the beginning of how utterly unhinged they became. 2 years ago, I lost my grandfather. We were incredibly close, you know. I practically grew up at his beach house, spending every summer there. He taught me to surf, showed me all the hidden spots, and we'd just sit for hours on his deck, talking about life, watching the sunset. When his will was read, I was genuinely shocked. He'd left me the beach house, and not just the deed, but this beautiful handwritten letter that I still keep in my nightstand. In it, he talked about how he'd seen me find so much peace there, how the ocean seemed to heal something in me, and how he wanted me to always have that sanctuary. He even specifically mentioned that he knew I needed a place to escape the pressures of modern life. My sister, Michelle, she's 33, she got an equal inheritance, but in cash, roughly the same value as the house. My dad, Bruce, 57, he inherited his father's main residence, a huge colonial in the suburbs, worth considerably more than either of ours. At the time, everyone seemed perfectly satisfied. Now, this beach house isn't some mansion. It's a modest 3-bedroom cottage, built in the 1960s, about 2 hours from where I live. It needs constant maintenance, which, honestly, I've lovingly provided. I've kept Grandpa's wind chimes on the porch, his collection of sea glass in the windows, even his ancient coffee maker that only works if you hit it just right. It's more than just a house, it's a piece of him. I work in tech with a demanding schedule that often runs 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. So, I mostly use the house on weekends or for an occasional longer stay when I can work remotely. But it's become absolutely essential for my mental health. It's my place to decompress, to surf, to read, to just exist without the constant ping of notifications and demands. About 6 months ago, though, things started to shift. It began subtly, with small comments from my mother during family gatherings. "Such a shame that beautiful house sits empty during the week," she'd say almost mournfully. Or, "3 bedrooms for one person seems excessive, don't you think?" I'd try to laugh it off, explaining I was there as often as I could, and how maintaining it was a labor of love. Then, about 4 months ago, Michelle started joining in. She'd mention how her kids, Christina, 5, and Ethan, 3, were getting cramped in their current home. How the schools near the beach were excellent. How unfair it was that I got the prize of the inheritance while she just got money, conveniently forgetting that she used that money for a boat and a kitchen renovation. Last Sunday, during our monthly family dinner at my parents' house, they really tag-teamed me. It felt like a meticulously planned attack. We'd barely finished the main course when my mother cleared her throat and launched into this prepared speech about family resources being used efficiently, and how Grandpa, while meaning well, couldn't have foreseen how the family's needs would evolve. She actually used corporate buzzwords like maximizing utility and resource allocation. Can you believe that? Michelle jumped in immediately, painting this idyllic picture of her kids growing up by the beach, learning to surf like we did, building sandcastles every morning. Her husband, Jason, 32, he chimed in with research he'd apparently done on the local schools, showing me rankings on his phone, and talking about how the sea air would be so good for Christina's asthma, a condition I'd never even heard her mention before. The culmination of this whole performance was my mother suggesting that I should either gift the house to Michelle or sell it to her for a family discount, which meant about 40% below market value. When I asked why Michelle couldn't just buy a beach house with her inheritance money, Jason actually laughed, and said she'd already spent it on responsible family investments. I couldn't help but point out that a boat he uses twice a year and a kitchen renovation aren't exactly necessities, especially when they could have sold the boat to fund a beach house if that's what they really wanted. I reminded them that Grandpa left specific instructions in his will, that he wanted me to have that house. I even offered to read them his letter, though, honestly, that felt too personal to share with their greedy, entitled energy. My mother's response chilled me to the bone. "Dad was getting sentimental at the end," she said dismissively. "He wasn't thinking clearly about what's best for the family's future." When I firmly said no, Michelle accused me of being selfish, saying I just use it as a bachelorette pad for weekend parties, which is laughable to anyone who knows me. My idea of a wild weekend is reading 3 books and falling asleep on the deck at 9 p.m. My mother shook her head and said she was disappointed in my lack of family values and my inability to see the bigger picture. My father, Bruce, who had been completely silent during dinner, later pulled me aside in the kitchen. He said he understood why I wanted to keep the house, but asked if I'd consider some kind of timeshare arrangement. Maybe they could have it during the summer months when the kids are off school, he suggested. When I pointed out that summer is when I use it most, he sighed and said I was putting him in an impossible position. Even my boyfriend, Luke, 29, who's usually completely supportive, asked on the drive home if maybe I was being too rigid. He knows how much the house means to me. He's seen me there, seen how my entire demeanor changes when we cross the bridge onto the island. But even he wondered if there was some compromise that could keep the family peace. I felt so utterly betrayed that even he was suggesting I should consider giving up my sanctuary. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the mornings I'd watched the sunrise from Grandpa's deck, coffee in hand, planning my day of surfing. The nights I'd spent there after brutal work weeks, slowly feeling human again. The weekend I spent there after my last relationship ended, walking the beach for hours and finally feeling like myself again. How can I explain to them that it's not just a house? It's where I go to remember who I am. Am I really the selfish one for wanting to keep my inherited property that was specifically left to me? The house means everything to me. It's not just about the property value or having a weekend getaway. It's about having a place where I can breathe, where I can exist without pretense or pressure. It's about honoring my grandfather's wishes and the bond we shared. But my entire family is making me feel like I'm some kind of selfish monster for not handing over my inheritance to my sister, just because she chose to have kids. Update, about 3 weeks later, asterisk, they're escalating, and I'm at my breaking point. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original thoughts. The overwhelming consensus that I'm not the villain gave me the confidence to stand firm, though I've been second-guessing myself constantly. Your comments about family entitlement and honoring my grandfather's wishes really resonated. Unfortunately, things have escalated beyond what I could have imagined. 2 weeks ago, I left work early on Friday around 2 p.m. instead of my usual 7 p.m. I'd had a particularly brutal week and just needed to get to the beach house. The entire drive, I felt my shoulders slowly relaxing, looking forward to my weekend routine. Arrive, open all the windows to let the sea air in, make a simple dinner, and fall asleep to the sound of waves. As I turned onto the coastal road, I noticed the increased traffic, but didn't think much of it. Tourist season was starting, but when I pulled up to my house, my stomach dropped. My mother's BMW was in the driveway, along with Michelle's SUV and Jason's sedan. My spot, where I always park in the shade of the old oak tree Grandpa planted, was blocked. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. Through the windows, I could see movement inside my house. The front door was wide open, Grandpa's wind chimes singing in the breeze as if nothing was wrong. When I walked in, the scene was surreal. My mother was at the dining table with papers spread out in front of her. Michelle and Jason were in the kitchen, Jason cooking with my pans while Michelle opened a beer from my fridge. The kids were in the living room, toys scattered everywhere, watching cartoons on my TV. They'd even moved some of the furniture around. My mother looked up, casually, as if I was late for an appointment. "Jamie, good. You're here. We're having a family meeting about the beach house situation." I thought neutral ground would be best for a productive discussion. Neutral ground. I sputtered, shaking with disbelief. "This is my house." Jason turned from the stove with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're making tacos. There's plenty if you're hungry. I hope you don't mind, but your spice rack was a bit lacking, so I brought some from home." The audacity left me speechless. My niece, Christina, ran up to me holding one of Grandpa's old painted seashells I keep on the mantel. "Aunt Jamie, Mommy says this is going to be my room." She pointed to the guest room, the one with the ocean view that I use as my office, where I'd spent countless hours working remotely, finding inspiration in the horizon. I tried to stay calm. "Everyone needs to leave. This is trespassing." Michelle laughed. Actually laughed. "Trespassing? We're family. Mom has a key." "Family doesn't trespass. They visit," I said slowly. "I changed the locks 4 weeks ago." "How did you get in?" My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Well, we still had the old key, and when we tried it, it didn't work. But the property management company in town remembered when Dad used them years ago. I explained this was a family emergency, that we were worried about you, and they helped us check on things." I was shaking with rage. Not only had they manipulated a local business that my grandfather had trusted for decades, but they'd essentially committed fraud to gain entry. "You lied to them to break into my house." "We didn't break anything," my mother said defensively. "They let us in with their master key, and we explained the situation." I noticed Jason's notebook then. It was open to sketches of kid-friendly renovations, including removing Grandpa's built-in bookshelves to make room for toy storage. "You have 1 hour to leave," I said, my voice deadly calm, "or I'm calling the police." That's when my mother stood up, her full height meant to be intimidating. "You would call the police on your own family? Your grandfather would be ashamed. He valued family above everything. He valued respect and boundaries." I shot back. "Which is why he left me this house, because he knew I'd take care of it, not treat it like I'm entitled to it." The situation deteriorated quickly. Jason started crying, saying I was traumatizing the children by threatening their parents. Michelle accused me of being exactly what's wrong with millennials: selfish, materialistic, and putting property over people. My mother pulled out her phone and called my father, putting him on speaker so he could talk sense into me. The final straw was when I went to use the bathroom and found Michelle in my bedroom, my private space, with a measuring tape, checking if their California king bed would fit. She'd even moved some of my things around to visualize the new layout. On my dresser, next to the photo of Grandpa and me from my college graduation, she'd placed a sticky note that said, "Move to garage." I lost it. I mean, completely lost it. I yelled at her to get out, that she had no right to even think about my private space. She tried to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting and that she was just planning for the inevitable. I called the police then and there. While we waited, my mother tried every manipulation tactic in the book. She talked about family legacy, about how Grandpa's house should be filled with children's laughter, about how I was choosing to be alone and bitter. Jason packed up his taco supplies with theatrical sighs, telling the kids that Aunt Jamie didn't want them there. Christina started crying, asking why I was being mean. When the officers arrived, I showed them my deed, explained the situation, and showed them text messages from 3 weeks ago, explicitly stating that no one was welcome at the property without my express permission. My mother tried to argue it was a civil matter, a family dispute that didn't require police intervention. The officers disagreed and told everyone to leave immediately. As they gathered their things, Michelle hissed at me that I'm everything wrong with my generation, and that I'll die alone in that house. Jason loudly told the children that some people value things more than family. My mother said nothing, but the look she gave me was meant to convey complete disappointment and disgust. After they left, I called the property management company immediately. The manager was mortified when I explained what had happened. Apparently, my mother had spun a story about me being unreachable and having a mental health crisis, claiming they needed to do a wellness check. The company has since updated their policies and assured me this won't happen again. I'm also pursuing legal action against them for unauthorized entry. They'd moved my coffee maker to make room for a kid snack station. There were juice boxes in my fridge. They'd even started a grocery list on my whiteboard, crossing off items I had listed and adding their own. The violation felt so much deeper than just trespassing. They tried to erase me from my own space. After they left, I found they'd already made small changes. I spent that night installing new locks, smart locks this time, with unique codes I can control remotely. I also had a security company install a comprehensive camera system around the property the next day, covering all approaches, including the beachside access. I learned my lesson about having blind spots. I've since hired a lawyer to send a formal cease and desist letter to all of them, making it clear that any further attempts to enter the property will result in criminal charges. My father calls daily, crying about how the family is torn apart. Extended relatives I haven't spoken to in years are reaching out to tell me I'm being unreasonable. My cousin posted on Facebook about how some people forget where they come from and think they're too good for family. I've had to block most of them. Luke has been supportive, but frustrated with the drama. He doesn't understand why they can't just respect my boundaries. He suggested selling the house just to end the conflict, but I refuse. Why should I give up my inheritance, my sanctuary, because they feel entitled to it? I'm heading back this weekend, and honestly, I'm anxious. Part of me expects to find windows broken or worse. The peace I once found there feels tainted now, but I'm determined to reclaim it. This is my house, my inheritance, my connection to my grandfather. I won't let them take that from me. Have you ever had family try to stake a claim on something that was explicitly yours? How did you handle it? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.